Well, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the late video. Unfortunately, my house over the weekend was full of flu. So, yeah, we've just had a weekend of it. But, the videos today really just highlights to me something fundamentally wrong with the South African government. And that is, it's just full of shit. So let's have a look at the news stories today and have a look at why they are just full of shit. So this is the first news story, that the minister has urged law firms, which include Norton, Rose, Fulbright and AfriForum, to withdraw their court challenge against the legal sector code, describing the legal action as an embarrassment to 30 years into democracy. Now, I've got to be honest and say the actual only embarrassment that I can see is the freaking ANC that think that everybody else is as retarded as they are. Now, let's actually have a look at what this legal code is. So the legal code was finalized in 2021, gazetted in September 2024, and what it does is it mandates state institutions to outsource legal work to previously disadvantaged practitioners. It also establishes the Legal Sector Charter Council to monitor compliance. Now, obviously, you can imagine the usual people that just love this. The individuals that love it are people like the Pan-African Bar Association and the Black Lawyers Association, because effectively, let's actually look at what this does. Let's cut all the legal bullshit, and let's actually just flat out look at what this does. So what it effectively does is say, if you're a state institution, you can only give your legal work to previously disadvantaged individuals, basically being black individuals. And if you're white, well, you remember you're previously advantaged, ergo you don't get nothing. This isn't based on quotas. It says it mandates institutions to outsource to previously disadvantaged practitioners. So let's actually consider 100% observance of this done, right? So 100% is done. So white people don't get any jobs. That's racist. Are you morons too stupid to understand this? Because what you're doing is you're doing job reservations. Where has that been done before? Isn't that what happened in apartheid? So it's apartheid. And you'll say, no, it's addressing the historical imbalances. It's not. It's job reservations. It's job reservations saying that the only individuals who can get legal work from the state are black individuals. The end. That's job reservations. That's racist. So yes, ANC clown, of course, do you want to know what the real embarrassment is? 30 years into democracy, you're still trying to enact forms of black apartheid, where basically the roles are being reversed. Let's move then swiftly on to the next article. This is an article written in the Times of why is it that in South African education, apparently we can't get rid of racism. And this supposedly highlights how schools remain ill-equipped to handle racism. There's no anti-racism content in curriculum, and teachers lack any form of training. Now, it's important to understand that this is an article written in the Times Live as basically a sectarian article, because what this article has actually been written by is one of those stooges who've been drinking on the whole critical race theory juju. They set up a whole critical race theory juju consultancy company. They give consultancy based on racism, and then they go, oh, there's not enough of my product, and you need more of it. And the Times pick it up as if it's somehow factual. This is a marketing ploy, but it's marketing with racism, because you see, the key words here are there are no anti-racism content. Now, for those of you who don't know what the word anti-racism means, it basically means reverse racism. It means there's not enough racism against white people, telling white people why they're the most despicable, horrible, disgusting people on the planet. And what we need is we need more of that in schools, because that's how we stop racism. This is Robin DiAngelo's idea of critical race theory. If you don't believe me, go read their content. This is what they believe. Remember, just by the mere fact that you exist, you're white, it means you're racist. Ergo, you need to be told every day for the rest of your life why you're racist and why the system just supports you because everybody else is racist. And so the system needs to adopt forms of racism, also known as anti-racism, against white people in order to have equality. This is genuinely what they think, and it's disgusting. So let's then move on to something that I just thought was the most disgusting thing I've seen all weekend. And you know what? I'm not here to debate the arguments between the US, Israel, Iran, military strikes. It is what it is. Like, it's got nothing to do with me. I don't live in Israel. I don't live in the US. And I don't live in Iran. But let us not pretend for 1 second like Iran is like the world's Wakanda. It's not. It's a country driven forward by Islamic extremists who fund terrorism across the globe, who have been responsible for firing yearly 400 rockets to Israel every year for the past 30 years. They advocate for the death of the West, the death of Europe, the death of Israel, and the death of pretty much everybody. It's a country driven by a death cult. And you may say, oh, wow, hasn't been impacting the rest of us. Kind of has, because a lot of their policies mean Europe has been overrun with immigration, America's been overrun by potential extremists. A lot of these things trace their origin in theories from Iran. But anyway, that's a fact. You can look it up yourself. I'm not here to debate the merits of that. In any case, now that America has bombed the crap out of Iran and Israel is sending its nuclear ambitions back to the Stone Age, Ramaphosa said that at the weekend, because it somehow apparently has something to do with him, he says that a peacemaking deal is the only way forward and that he calls for a broad dialogue to occur. But this is a broad dialogue that he wants to occur with the UN. Now, the problem is that nobody takes the UN seriously anymore because it's been captured by left-wing morons who all want to adopt left-wing talking points. The entire organization is extremist governed. The UN is a joke. Everybody thinks the UN is a joke. So Ramaphosa says, well, the UN should be allowed to mediate. The UN's been allowed to mediate for how long? But it's a waste of space. So as a result, let us not forget Iran breached the agreement that they had with the UN in terms of observance on nuclear proliferation. They told them to basically do one, and that's why this resulted in a strike. Because they were apparently weeks away from plutonium enrichment. This is the facts of the matter. So we meant to go back to the body as somehow is responsible for escalating to this point because they're useless, and we're going to allow them to be more useless and to do a peace agreement. Okay. Well, not to be outdone in the stupidity department, Julius Malema then went on and said, actually, he wanted Israel to have a taste of the devastation it had perpetrated in Gaza. In other words, Israel should be destroyed. Julius, my man, this is why you're banned from England. You're banned from England, and you will continue to get banned from the rest of the countries in the world because you are an extremist retard. Now, the reality is that South Africa has been dubbed as being anxious. It's been dubbed as anxious by the president's spokesperson, who's now super anxious. South Africa's not anxious. The ANC's anxious. You're anxious because you're losing your funding. And let's face it, if the Ayatollah loses power and the Shah comes back, they're going to expose all the kickbacks that you morons had from Iran. And you're all going to look like a bunch of tits, aren't you? But you see, to sit there and say that our foreign policy is dictated by these idiots is highly problematic. Because the reality is, in one respect, the ANC wants to tell us it's governing with the GNU. It's not governing alone. It realizes that it lost the elections. In another breath, it wants to unilaterally determine what South Africa's foreign policy is. Nobody else has a say, just the ANC. And would you know it? Yeah, the EFF are also like, yeah, let us in there. We're going to show them just how retarded we sound. Now, this all becomes very interesting as well, because over the weekend, it turned out that apparently Russia and South Africa are aiming to double their bilateral trade. So what they're effectively attempting to do is go harder into Russia. And one has to ask the question as to why. Is this more a geopolitical realignment, or is it them trying to politically align with Russia, who is strategically aligned with Iran? Iran and Russia actually signed an agreement at the start of this year that they would support each other militarily. Is this us trying to get in bed with the Axis powers? Because that's not non-alignment. South Africa frequently says it's non-aligned, but there's no non-alignment here. Now, what South Africa should really be doing is concentrating on its debt, its unemployment issues, all the legislation that it keeps doing to kill jobs one after another. But instead, we're sitting there on the international stage trying to do forms of grandstanding. But you know, we're not alone. At least North Korea said that they agree with South Africa, that Iran was a peaceful country and that it should be left alone. This is what we're left with. We are literally left with retards. When world superpowers go to war, you stand back and go, nothing to do with me. That's what happens. You are not a world superpower. After all, are we going to send the EFF to Iran to support the Iranian regime? Scrap that. I fully support the EFF being sent to Iran to support the regime. 100%. And on to my final news article of today that just got me shaking my head. Now, I've made a number of predictions around the national dialogue. The national dialogue, which we all know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be a talking shop of saying, well, everything's the Wati's fault and it's the Barathe's fault, and the ANC are brilliant. Well, a former minister, still a retard, has defended the national dialogue as, and I quote, an opportunity of reckoning and rebirth. Notice that word, reckoning. Reckoning for who? They further go on to say that they're urging citizens to squarely face racial and economic divisions. So it's exactly as we said. So what you basically want to do is do forms of transformation and do more anti-racism. Remember what anti-racism actually means. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to couch this all in terms of actual structural reflection. There's no structural reflection, yeah? It's a blame game. That's what you want this for. You want it to blame the Watis. That's exactly what the national dialogue is going to be. 700 million to get told it's your fault. Yeah, good use of money. ANC are just retarded. I'm so over the ANC. They are just done beyond all imagination. Who the freak votes for these idiots? But that's just my view. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow. Bye.